All right, I'm going to throw you a curveball. I've got an article that I want to talk about that I've basically prepped you for, or I haven't prepped you, but you know about the article in advance. So we'll talk through that one. And I've got another one just to keep you on your toes, if that's possible. Let's see if we can stump Holly.
We're all gonna die.
We're all screwed. The zombies are coming.
Brains.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah, no, I think it's there's definitely multiple lenses that you could look at something like this, and we'll put a link to the article in the description. We're not here to cloud anyone's judgment, but when Holly and I were talking about this specific market update, the thought was, let's throw an article out here and just give you our opinion on the article, right? Because there's multiple. Holly's got her lens, I've got mine, you're going to have yours as a consumer. So let's just go through that. And then here in just a minute, we'll jump into the update tool as we do every week and let you know what the data says. And Holly's got some additional stats that she's pulled from the MLS that we can go over too. So what are your overall thoughts on this article?
Well, for one, the whole point of an article headline is to freak people out and make them click because they need to know what's happening. Oh my God, they just told me that, I'm losing everything.
What are you afraid of losing? Everything.
Secondary to that, I think we are looking at nationwide numbers. And, every state, every markets within states, markets within specific cities or towns all have their own data. So it's really hard to say, here's what's happening across the board, because yes, statistically that may be happening, but when we look at different pockets in certain markets, we're gonna see some things that are slightly different. And I think we feel that pretty normally in North Texas, because we are a pretty sought after location for people moving in from out of state, whether it's for work or, schools or what family, whatever their reasons are. Every market's going to have its own little nuance that's going to be different than the national media. Some are going to be worse off and some are going to be much better. And that's where averages come in.
No, that's good. So let's say the article is dead on and that home prices are about to fall by a lot. How much is a lot?
Gosh, that's subjective, isn't it? What's a lot? And is it a lot? Is it unrealized losses, right? Is it unrealized gains? Unrealized losses. So if you think about the stock market, right? If my stocks drop, and I don't cash out, and then they come back up, unrealized losses. And if they get to a high point and I didn't sell and they came down a little bit and then I sold, I have unrealized gains. So even though the market was doing this, if I'm not playing in the market at that moment, it's almost irrelevant to me, right? I'm making my mortgage payment. My interest rate hasn't changed from whatever I did when I purchased it, right? All things remain the same. Just because the value of my property might have gone up in March, April, May of this year, it could have been significantly higher. If I didn't sell it then, it's irrelevant because it was unrealized gains. I didn't want or need to sell my house at that time, so I would have never made that gain in equity because I didn't sell.
Yeah. No, that's a really good point. I love the stock analogy because I think most people can relate to that. When you're talking about your home, you don't look at your home like you do the value of a stock or an index fund. Right? The purpose of you buying that particular home, especially if it's one that you lived in,
I pretty much live there.
Usually transcends what is my market opportunity. I'm not buying a house to make money, although that's one of the benefits of owning real property, but that's not the core reason why you did it. Like the house that you live in, Holly, why did you buy that house?
It was on 2 acres. It was out of an HOA. We got to design and build everything. I mean, we had all these things. We were planning. Our life had changed. Our kids moved out. Now we're empty nesters and we get to plan for whatever that next phase looks like. We didn't have to care what school we were zoned to, right? We were able to make decisions that we couldn't make the previous 20 years.
Now, why was it important to you to not be in an HOA?
Really that part wasn't, people get all freaked out about HOAs and we have them all over Texas and people are like, I hate the HOA. I don't mind HOAs as a general rule. But generally, if you're in an HOA, the house next door to you is almost within arm's reach. So we wanted a little more space more than anything. So we just wanted to be a little bit out in the country.
I know the real reason. You wanted the ability to be able to paint your house purple at a moment's notice without having to ask permission.
Absolutely. I wanted a multicolor exterior that an HOA would never allow.
Holly's a huge purple fan. Was there any particular points of the article that you wanted to point out?
No, nothing real specific, just so that we can frame it in a way that makes a little more sense for people who are truly buying and selling real estate because it's the home they live in. They're not investors. They're not flipping. They weren't trying to make a quick buck between March and today.
So you make a good point. So in this first paragraph, the effects of the Fed's rate hikes and its war against inflation are being felt in just about every crevice of the economy as recession fears are quickly mounting. Let's take a look real quick at what interest rates are doing today. We've talked about this before, but we'll put a link down in the description. This site, mortgagenewsdaily.com/mortgage-rates. According to this, the 30-year fix is at 7.22%, and then 30-year FHA 6.75, 30-year VA 6.77. So we're firmly in the sevens, and in the case of these loans here, high sixes. Holly, does that automatically mean if I buy a house today, and let's say I'm going to use conventional financing, this 30-year fixed, is my rate going to be 7.22% no matter what?
Oh, I love the caveat of no matter what, because absolutely not. There are so many options. I think we talked about it on a recent video. Well, in fact, we didn't. We just had this one happen. We have a buyer. His contract price is $695,000. His appraisal came in at $715,000. So we were able to take $20,000. We increased our contract price to $715,000. We asked the seller to give us back the $20,000 at closing. It does not affect the seller in any way. They were still getting their $695,000. That $20,000 we just got rolled into the loan is going back for the buyer to do with whatever he wants. He can use it towards closing costs. He can buy down rates. So he's not going to close at a 7% interest rate because he's going to spend some money, whatever it is. I don't know how much he's spending to do that, but he's going to lower his own interest rate because that's going to carry him and save him much more in long run, as opposed to this $20,000 on a sales price potentially.
Now, do you know how long he's going to live in that house?
I don't. He thinks he's going to live there, right?
What's his plan?
His plan is, I think it's about 10 more years. He has some kids in an age group that puts them graduating high school in the next 9 to 10 years. So his plan is to be in that house till they graduate.
Gotcha. So depending upon what the plan is, whether you're going to stay for 5 years, 30 years, whether you're going to die in the house, whatever might dictate how much you buy the rate down.
Right.
There's a lot of moving factors. Is that a fair statement?
Yeah, and it's not going to be the same scenario for every single buyer and seller. And that's what I distrust about these articles. They are mass data. It's throwing everything out there. And it's just not the same for every person or every property or every location. So people really need a guide. They need somebody who knows what's happening in their local market and can take their specific needs and help them make that decision based on what's truly happening locally, not what's happening globally.
Yeah. Can you share your screen and pull up that MLS bit? Is this a good time to do that?
Sure.
Yeah. Walk us through this real quick. What are we looking at here, Holly?
Yeah, so I just pulled a really quick historic sales price trend, right? We're just looking at some median prices, year over year averages, and this goes back 10 years. This is all the MLS goes back for us. So, right, we could say 2012, you're selling 10 years later, right? Here we are in this nice high point. The data, we do have it broken down month by month, and we can see all of that.
And to clarify, this is sold. Homes that sold in Collin County.
In Collin County, Texas.
Over the last 10 years, and this is the median sales prices.
Yes.
Got it. Okay.
And to give a little context to this, right? If I go look at the actual data and use the actual numbers, anybody who lives in Collin County or is familiar is going to say 452, 455. These numbers seem really low because they're medians, right? We have plenty of million plus, multi-million dollar properties. Most of our properties in certain cities are going to be well over this 400 or 500 price point, but we have median across the entire county. So this gives us at least a snapshot, kind of the same thing as that article of using mass numbers for the entire country. Same thing happens here, even inside Collin County, right? I can go city to city and these numbers are going to look very different, but we're going to see a similar trend.
Now, it's been widely said, and I would even say accepted, that if you look at this bump that we've had since January 2020, like all the COVID real estate, if you the point that has been widely accepted is we've managed to compress, let's say, an entire market cycle of gain inside of these 2 years, which I think is probably a fair statement, right? But even if you pull that out, if you take out anything from January 2020 to current and just look at the historical going back from 2012 up to 2020, it's still going up. Yeah. You got some peaks in there and some valleys, but long term, it's still going up.
Well, yeah, absolutely. And a point to that is, let's go even inside the 2020 to 2022, right? If I bought a property in January of 2021, and this is the median right at that time, I'm still doing pretty well if I have to sell my house today in most cases, right? Again, case by case. Now I have unrealized gains here in March, April, May, June, but I'm still doing okay, even if I had to sell within 18 months or maybe a year, 2 years.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. Anything else we want to cover on the MLS piece?
I don't think so. Charts are boring.
Let's go back to this article. Yeah, just looking at some of these, sentences. While economists debate whether the nation is already in a recession or heading towards a down, like economists can't even get on the same page of whether we're in a recession or we're not.
Well, we keep moving the goalpost. We keep redefining a recession.
Yeah. It's clear that the housing market has shifted dramatically. I would say that's a true statement. The Fed is determined to cool inflation, and they're willing to throw a housing market under the bus to do so, says Devin Bachman, Senior VP of Research at John Garms Real Estate Consulting. When you raise mortgage rates to the point that they are today, it breaks the back of housing. So we know why they're doing this stuff, but if you need to move, it's kind of inconvenient that rates are in the 7s and not in the 4s. But we heard from one of our lending partners yesterday. Do you remember what they said that they anticipate rates being at?
Yeah, I don't remember.
I don't remember exactly, so we won't misquote them. All right, so I think we don't have to read this whole article to folks, but when you just pick things out of here, to me, it's obvious what they're selling is polarization about a very hot topic right now. If you're not in real estate, you probably aren't finding articles like this. If you're not thinking about selling or buying, you're probably not, this isn't even on the radar. Mom, if you're watching, thanks for tuning in. Be sure to hit the like button. But it's a hot topic. Go ahead, Holly.
Well, now I was going to say, if they flipped this conversation and said things like we just said, like, hey guys, unless you were looking to flip that house in this last 6-month period, things still look really good. If they wrote that as the headline, you would just skip by with a smile on your face and never click on it. You're like, oh, great news. They need to give you the bad news in order for you to click and engage with them. And it's not that this news isn't real, it's reality, but it also may not be as bad as it's made out to be in article headlines.
Well, and it's designed to operate in the gray, like the way that sentences are structured so that you're not saying definitively It's clear that the housing market has shifted dramatically. That's pretty easy to say. But when economists debate whether the nation is already in a recession or heading towards a downturn, it's like, well, is it? Is it not? Well, economist A says this, Greenspan says this, right? You can make up your own mind. So here's an article Forbes put out, and we'll put a link to this one in the description as well. Housing market recession, home builders warn collapse is unsustainable and prices could tumble another 20%. Right off the rip, what's your thought?
I mean, again, when you go to a high in such a short amount of time, I think we can all expect that those numbers do have to settle. And in the short term, they may not be wrong. And again, if you were going to buy your house and sell it within a short amount of time, that's a risk you take in any market. I think this market, we had to know we were taking a bigger risk. We had values climbing faster than the appraisal values could catch up. So we had personal values of, I believe it's worth $100,000 more because that's what I'm willing to pay for it. Well, when you do that and it creates this kind of artificial market in the moment due to supply and demand, I think we had to expect that was going to happen. Again, if you're going to stay in the house 5, 7, 10 years, then we know the trajectory of our pricing tends to trend up over time. Will you recuperate that? We think so. But I also think I'm going to stay in a house for 10 years and I have to sell after 2 because a life circumstance happened. So, timing the market becomes so difficult because we can't see the future. We don't know what's going to happen. We can all make our own even life plans and something changes. So we make decisions that make the best sense for us in the moment for what we need to accomplish. So yeah, I can say I don't think that's unrealistic that some of these are going, they're going to realize that same 20% loss potentially in the short term. I do feel like based on historical data, you and I ran those numbers a while back in a video and we came up, I think it was 7.6% average year over year, which means 1 year you get 15% in this crazy COVID thing, right? And 1 year you only get 1%, right? So over time we have the 7.6% average. Again, could it drop 20%? Sure. If you don't sell your house, does it matter? Nope.
Yeah, you got to live somewhere.
Gotta live somewhere. And is your interest rate 3.5%? And so, maybe your valuation dropped, but you're still making this mortgage payment that makes sense for you and your family and nothing has changed on that side. There's really there's no downside until it's time to sell, and then you have to make those decisions.
Yeah, no, that's good. Well, let's jump into the market update tool real quick and we'll land this plane.
All right. Just like we talk about every week, right? We like the little gas gauge. We've softened just a fraction more, but we're still calling this a strong seller's market. I can say personally with buyers and sellers that we're working with, we are still moving really well in North Texas. Is it the same on the market 24 hours, 22 offers, 100,000 over? No way. That was a unsustainable market. And we knew that was unsustainable. We were at 100% seller's market, at one point during all of this. So to say that we're at 50% and still a strong seller's market, this market to me feels normal. So I've been in the industry a long time. The last 2 years were very abnormal. There was nothing normal about that market. And this market feels like our normal, stable North Texas market.
So it looks like median rent still holding flat, price decrease, flattening out, continue to flatten out. In fact, that's starting to drop just a hair.
Yeah, it's a fractional because I think, we had to go through a time of settling where, we didn't know what the property was going to sell for because we had this crazy inflated market for so long, right? Most sellers are not willing to be the first one on the block to come in lower. They need to feel the decline. And so that's why I think we're seeing fewer price decreases. We'll see that start to settle out because we will have better current data. This data has changed so quickly from the spring into the fall that we don't really know what somebody's going to be willing to pay for your house until we get it on the market. We have some local comps, but if nothing else in your neighborhood has sold, if nobody else has taken that hit yet, right, from what they thought they were going to get, So I think this number is going to settle out pretty significantly. It's the faster we learn the data and we see what the trend is, the fewer price decreases we have to take because we know what to expect.
Good stuff. What else jumps out at you? Any major markers that you want to point out?
No, I mean, same things we've been talking about. We know that the average days on market are increasing, right? We go back 90 days here. We were at 26 days. Now we're at 55. Not abnormal, even for a early summer, spring market into the fall market. Our normal is that our days on market, will adjust in seasonal cycles. This isn't scary to me at all, 55 days on the market, because really we call 6 months of inventory a stable market. If your house in a stable market was on the market for up to 6 months, that would not be abnormal. So for us to say 55 days and this is terrible, well, it's a lot more than 3 days, but it's still pretty far from 6 months.
All right, Holly, once again, thanks for your time. And here's Ice Cube with some parting thoughts.
Bye, Felicia.